What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin Svenson, and today is December 8th, and we're going to be discussing, of course, the price of Bitcoin. Now, since our dump that went from 56.5 to 42,500, that major dump we just saw recently, what we've been doing since then is really just a bunch of nothing. A lot of sideways, not much action going on. Some of the altcoins have seen a little bit of action, but Bitcoin mostly sideways. And this is pretty much, what we were talking about on this channel right when the dump happened. And right after the dump happened, I was tweeting about it. I said, expect multi-week sideways action, right? Because that's usually what happens after these kinds of dips. When the market experiences that kind of a correction, usually there's a little bit of shock, and when we have that secondary emotional feedback with that selling pressure that comes in, right, that secondary waves of fear where the price gets bogged down a little bit by all the selling pressure and the fear. That's pretty much exactly what we saw. That's exactly what we discussed in my last video called Post-Dump Review. We were talking about this exact type of price action that was going to take place for Bitcoin. And in the last video in the comments section, there was a lot of mixed reviews about this previous post-dump review video. People complaining, saying, oh, you sound like you don't know what's going to happen next. or they're saying like, oh, you sound very uncertain. And guys, the point of that video, the post-dump review, I wasn't trying to make a prediction in that video, guys. I was actually talking about the Bitcoin stock market correlation, right? I wasn't talking about what was going to happen next or something like that. Where basically what I was explaining was what would Bitcoin do in relation to the stock market, right? And now we have seen a good recovery for the stock market, a really solid rebound. Bitcoin saw a little bit of a bounce back, though we are more so sideways in the stock market. And now in this video, I want to talk a little bit more about what I actually expect from the market, right? The last video, I was not talking about what I was expecting. I was talking about what is going to happen if the stock market goes up, down, or sideways, right? And a lot of people were saying, oh, Kev, you're just saying the market's going to go up, down, or sideways. It's funny because that wasn't a prediction, all right? I was discussing scenarios. And a lot of people get confused when I talk about this because they think that Bitcoin's supposed to be a hedge against the stock market, and it has never been. And Satoshi never said it should be. Bitcoin was designed as a hedge against inflation, not stock market movements. There's no design mechanism that's tied to stocks or against stocks for Bitcoin, right? It's about inflation. Bitcoin performs better than the stock market in percentage terms, right? Even though the moves are very similar, right? Just to reiterate. And the key factor that is now taking place in recent times is that Wall Street money is in crypto, right? So what happens to Wall Street affects Bitcoin because Wall Street's money is in it, right? And that means that human decision-making affects Bitcoin from a Wall Street perspective. Now we've seen the stock market rebound. So this does make me a lot more bullish, right? Look at this, guys. This really nice upward sloping price channel. This is since, actually 2020, mid 2020, we've been forming this price channel. And we've gotten a higher low, a nice area where previous resistance became new support for the S&P. We're bouncing up to resistance. Is the S&P just going to launch to new highs from here? Well, historically, seasonally, the seasonality chart would say so. But I think we're at resistance now, right? So what's most likely going to happen is the S&P is going to be looking probably to come down, fill this little gap right here, chop around sideways before rallying into 2022. So we could see a nice sideways move for the S&P and then a rally into 2022. That is what I think is most likely. And that means that, Bitcoin may also see that sideways movement. And then by the time the S&P gets that sideways movement in the breakout, right, that's very likely when Bitcoin's going to be coming up out of this zone, breaking out above maybe the 55K, their 60K level, right? So by the end of the month, we may have a shot at getting out of this 60,000 zone or 55,000 zone, right? So yeah, I do think the correlation will continue, right? Just once again, for those of you that are probably sitting there saying, but Kevin, it's not correlated, right? Well, let me just refresh your memory once again. Here's Bitcoin and the S&P since June of this year. Very, very closely correlated, very closely correlated. Sometimes there's a few days or a week delay between the moves, like Bitcoin bounced up here, and then the S&P took about a week to follow. So like in June, Bitcoin was kind of generally trending down. The S&P was trending up. Less correlation in this range at the 30,000 bottom, right? But after that, they both moved up together, both moved down together, both rebounded together, both retraced together. And now recently, like if I can just move Bitcoin out of the way, the S&P has gotten this really rapid rebound, right? What I think is most likely is Bitcoin, Bitcoin's currently still feeling a little bit of that fear and that depressed market. The S&P will probably come back to fill this gap right here and go sideways and then rally into 2022. And Bitcoin will probably also do something similar, right? Breaking above 58,000 or so, 55,000 at the end of the month. Something along those lines is what I think is most likely right now. Now, remember, Bitcoin is not always 100% correlated all the time with the stock market, right? Again, just to reiterate my point, what I've researched is that it is very much based on the confidence of the market, right? If the stock market is bullish, right, then Bitcoin speculators are more bullish and actually becomes a little bit less correlated. But in times of uncertainty, Bitcoin becomes extremely correlated to the stock market like recently, right? Now, interestingly enough, when we were running up to 65, there was a lot less correlation. Bitcoin was performing better than the S&P, though they were both kind of going up at the same time. There was less correlation. Over here, 2019, more confidence because the S&P was recovering. Also, less correlation right there, right? So in the moments of extreme bullishness, we see Bitcoin becomes less correlated to the upside, But on the downside, guys, they become extremely correlated almost every time. It's just as clear as day, guys. It's as clear as sunshine in my eyes. It's as clear as sunshine, guys, that this is how the correlation works. It's based on speculation. It's based on confidence from speculators. When the S&P and Bitcoin are both bullish, less correlated. When the S&P and Bitcoin are both bearish, more correlated, right? Uncertainty. People's confidence become based on outside factors like the S&P's performance. And so now going back to the daily chart, to what's happened recently, now that we're starting to see the S&P bounce back, I think we're probably going to get a little bit more confidence, a little bit more bullish speculation from crypto in the Bitcoin market and the crypto market. Maybe we'll see some altcoins moving. Probably, again, just a little bit of chop from the S&P sideways, a little bit of chop from Bitcoin sideways, and then a rally going into 2022. This is still what I think is most likely now, right? So I do think that overall we're going to maintain the trend. It is a little bit iffy because we do have a break of our structure, right? If you're just taking the most touch points, right? I see people drawing this trend line in all kinds of weird ways. And it's kind of frustrating to look at, when you draw a trend line, guys, you want to just go for the most touch points, right? So you want to just be going for where does the trend line connect the most? And it would be something along these lines, right? You don't draw a trend line from, if you're just drawing it from here to here, there's only 2 touch points, and that's not a valid trend line, right? You want to go with the most touch points to identify and define the trend. So Bitcoin does have some work to do, right? It does have some work to do, right? I'm not going to cheat and draw the trend line differently. We're kind of underwater here at this point in time. We do have this previous wick high here, 53,000. The candle body closes about 51, almost 52,000. And a lot of that is coming from historic price action over here in March, April, May. This area from September. So we are kind of like underwater. We want to be popping up above 53. That would bring a lot of optimism, I think, into this market, getting above that 53 level and then looking to recover above this resistance point, about 59,000 or so, 60,000 by the end of the year, right? That's pretty much the best we can really hope for right now, is a recovery above that basically 60,000 by the end of this year. And that's the more realistic scenario, right? And if you're looking at the S&P, now that we've gotten the recovery bounce, it is making it more likely that we end the year somewhat bullish, that we at least consolidate and rally in a somewhat bullish manner for Bitcoin as well. If you're just looking at the S&P, bringing up Bitcoin once again, It's just a very, very similar trend taking place for the both of them. So it is definitely worth your time to be looking at the stock market, right? But again, once again, that gap right there, maybe we come back to fill it, chop, and then rally for the S&P and Bitcoin towards the end of the year, right? So the next major step is getting above that 53,000 level. And if we do that, that's going to bring in a lot of positive investor sentiment and a possible recovery into 2022. So that is my prediction, guys, right? The last video I made was not discussing a prediction, which that seemed to throw a lot of people off. People thought that I was just saying the market could go anyway, but now you guys know what my opinion actually is. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit that like button, and I'll see you all in the next video.